All right, guys. So we're just gonna this video. We're just jumping back in. So we left off with question 6 from the free response. Now we're on the last question, question 7. And question 7 is 4 prompts, so you know each one is just worth 1 point. So even if you had to explain or justify or whatever, you're only getting 1 point for that question, not 1 point for the right answer and 1 point for the correct explanation. One point for both. All right. So let's jump into it. Okay, so they give us a dot structure here of an ion, 2 minus charge. It says identify the hybridization of the valence orbitals of either carbon atom in the oxalate ion. So this carbon, and notice they're both identical in terms of what's around them. So they're going to have what we call the same hybridization. Now, hybridization is something that we don't talk about in Chemistry 1. So we will learn it in Unit 1 this year, but it's 1-47. So let's go to our visible learning document, 1-47. I can identify hybridization of atoms in a Lewis dot structure. So we have the Lewis dot structure, we just have to identify the hybridization. And whenever you have 3 domains around the central atom, 1, 2, 3, a double bond counts as 1 domain. 3 domains is always sp2. And it's just, we're going to learn what hybridization is, but the only, you never really on the AP exam have to explain what hybridization is. You have to just identify it. And it's really just memorizing. If you have 2 domains, it's sp. If you have 3 domains, it's sp2. If you have 4 domains, it's sp3. If you have 5 domains, it's sp3d. And if you have 6 domains, it's sp3d2. And that's the only hybridizations you're going to see. So essentially, if you can just memorize that, then you should be in good shape to get 1 point there. Okay? All right. If we go to B, it says silver oxalate is this formula. Ag2C2O4 is slightly soluble in water. The value of the KSP of this ionic compound is this. They give us the KSP. Write the expression for the solubility product of the KSP of silver oxalate. So again, we'll learn about this, but this is from Unit 4, and it's 4-1-9 and 4-1-6E. But really, we've had this one already, but being able to write the equilibrium expression, but this is in terms of KSP. So if we go to Unit 4, notice I can write the following equilibrium expressions, and here we go, KSP. All right. So what we have to understand is that when an ionic compound dissociates, the ions separate, and we have to use the subscripts to help us out. 2 silver ions and 1 oxalate ion. So the coefficient for silver when it dissolves is going to be 2. You're going to get 2 silver ions, and the coefficient for oxalate is going to be 1. So the expression is going to end up being silver ions squared times oxalate ions. Again, we're going to learn about this, but that would be the answer. Okay. Then it says calculate the molar solubility of the compound in distilled water. So remember, they gave us this value. They told us what KSP is equal to, right? KSP is equal to this. So we're going to learn about the KSP shortcuts, but if we go to our visible learning document, this is 4-45. If we go to 4-4, 4-4 is all about molar solubility in KSP, so we'll spend a lot of time on that. But notice KSP shortcut. So that's the one we're going to use. I won't explain why for this video, but we'll learn about it during the year. But we're going to use this one. And X in this shortcut represents molar solubility. So all we have to do is plug in the KSP value that was given and divide by 4, and then take the cubed root to solve for X. And that'll be the molar solubility. And remember, in the free response, you get a calculator. So we plug in our KSP here, we solve for X. X comes out to be 1.11 times 10 to the negative 4. Now the key is for this is we have to know the units for molar solubility. Notice they didn't give us any units for the KSP. And equilibrium constants, these K values, usually don't have any units. But molar solubility is molarity. So you could have capital M here, which is molarity, or moles per liter, which is molarity. Okay? And then step 3, the molar solubility increases. That means this becomes more soluble in an acidic solution, we'd have to recognize that as an acid instead of neutral water. Okay, so the molar solubility, this number goes up for this compound when it's in the presence of an acidic solution. So they want us to understand what's going on, and what's going on is the oxalate ion is reacting with the excess H plus from the acid, and it's coming out of solution in the form, well, it's staying dissolved, but it's not the oxalate ion anymore. It's either turning into this or two H pluses attach and turn into this. Both of these would be acceptable answers for this question. And we're going to learn about this, guys. So don't sweat it too much that you're not following 100% right now. But let's look at the VLOs. This is 5-1-6 and 5-1-14. And so let's find those, sorry. Oops. Where I want to go? I want to go here. So 5-1-6 and 5-1, I think that's what it said. So you have to know your 7 strong acids, and perchloric acid is one of the strong acids. So when we say you have 0.5 molar HClO4, you don't really have HCl4 in solution. You have H plus in solution, and you have ClO4 minus in solution. Okay, and it's the H plus that's reacting with the oxalate ion, and you kind of have to know that this acid or that acid would be considered weak. So once the H plus attaches itself to the oxalate ion, weak acids stay together. So that's how you know that some of the oxalate is taking itself out of solution by reacting with the H plus and forming this or that. And therefore, you need to dissolve more of this to bring the oxalate concentration up so that that compound can be saturated in solution. But again, it's something that we will be discussing and going over a lot. And what else was it? Oh, I can write the net ionic equations too. So this would be strong acid reacting with weak base. So we have to be able to recognize that oxalate is a weak base. And if it reacts with a strong acid, this is what will form. And you could either, I think this is probably the better option to choose from, but this would also happen. So either one would be acceptable because this is a pretty tough question, and I'm not sure many people will get it in the country, but either one would be fine. Okay. So that's it for that test. Okay, so we kind of went over that test. We broke down the VLOs, but I want us to understand something a little bit. All right, so let's go back to the visible learning document, and I want to break it down a little bit further and just kind of make you understand what's so. When you look at the visible learning document, we got a ton of visible learning objectives, but I want you to notice the visible learning categories. So I'm gonna, I might figure out a better word other than category. But when I say 1-1, so visible learning objective 1-1 has all of this stuff in it, right? Okay. So what I want you to notice is that if you go through all of the main categories, 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, if you scroll through all of the visible learning documents or visible learning document and you count how many of these bold objectives we have, how many of these categories we have, you'll notice that we have 40 categories. 40 categories throughout the year, including the lab ones. So if you went and counted all of the categories, this counts as the bold thing, right? If you count all the categories, we have 40 of them. And that's by design, right? When I started developing the visible learning document, I wanted to have like an even number of categories, right? An even number of visible learning categories. So there's 40 different visible learning objectives. And then, or I guess, visible learning objective categories. And then within each category, you have multiple objectives that kind of all tie into that same overarching category, right? And so and I did this for you, but if we look at this handout that I made, I wanted to count how many different categories were covered in the free response. All right, so we have 40 total. Okay, we have 40 categories total. And in that free response test, 49 categories were asked about. Now, a lot of them repeated because we only have 40, right? So there were 49 objectives, 49 categories. 9 of them came from Unit 1, seven of them came from Unit 2, 4 of them came from Unit 3, 8 of them came from Unit 4, 6 from 5, 6 from Unit 6, 3 categories from Unit 7, and 6 categories from labs, okay? So we have 40 different categories on this document. Only 25 of the categories were represented on the free response. Only 25 of those categories. A lot of, because a lot of them repeated. So like if we look at the outline here, we had 1-5 and then we had 1-5 again, right? And 1-5, 5-4, 5-4, 5-3, but then 5-4. So, notice 5-4 was asked a bunch, okay? So if we look at this, right, each question, we have a category that covers it. And the other thing is, of the 25 categories that were asked about here, it doesn't mean that the other 15 categories that weren't tested on the free response aren't important. It's most likely those categories were asked from on the multiple choice. Remember, it's a 50% multiple choice test, 50% free response test. So whatever things don't get asked on the multiple choice, they're going to be asked about on the free response. And whatever's not on the free response, is going to be asked about on the multiple choice. And another thing is, the main thing, the one category that probably will never show up is probably the first one. Because the first one, they're not going to waste the time asking you nomenclature questions. That's stuff from Chemistry 1. So you're probably not going to get a lot of just straight up, hey, what's the name of this compound? Or, what is this functional group? What is this functional group? Right? They're not going to ask you those types of questions. That's just memorization. But really, what eventually we're going to need to know is, if I have this functional group, and you might not even know the name of the functional group because that doesn't matter in terms of the eyes of College Board. What matters is if I have that functional group, I know I have hydrogen bonding. And that comes later on in Unit 1 where we're talking about, functional groups and IMFs and polar versus nonpolar and that kind of thing. All right, so this last test, this test that the chemistry students, the AP chemistry students from last year, the last school year, their free response covered 25 of our 40 categories, okay? And if you look at it, let me do the math here. 18 plus 14 plus 8. So 40% of the test was units 1 through 3. Units 1 through 3, 40% of the FRQ. And then, let's see, 16 plus 12 plus 12 plus 6 plus 12. So, let's do, let's say 30% was units 4 and 5, and equilibrium is a big part of the test. That was 16%. Acid base is a big part of the test. That was 12%. That unit 4 and unit 5 are equilibrium and acid base, and those tend to be a big part of the test. and it was 30%. And then the last units were also 30%. So unit 6, unit 7, and labs were 30%. Okay, so unit 7 was the lowest represented there. It was only 6%. 6% was unit 7, and that makes sense to me. Unit 7 is, I don't know. Unit 7 is a good mix of questions that could be brought to you in multiple choice or free response. So I'm guessing, I'm going to guess there was a lot of a lot of gas law questions on the multiple choice, a lot of kinetics questions on the multiple choice, and probably a lot of acid-base questions, because acid-base was only 12% of the free response, and it's usually about 20% of the overall test. So I bet another 8% came from the multiple choice. All right, so just kind of breaking it down a little bit. But so again, I just kind of want to show you how the visible learning document is going to help you out, guys. It's not something to shy away from. It's not something to ignore. Throughout the year, you're going to be keeping track of the objectives you know versus the objectives you don't understand, so that you know what to work on and what to improve on. And understand that this is what is going to be asked of you on the test. Of the 40 categories we have, 25 of them showed up on the free response. And again, that means the other 15 probably showed up on the multiple choice. And that's the thing, you don't know which ones are going to show up where, but they will show up. So understanding each category, and then, so yeah, it's great to know this category, but then knowing the little specific things under each category is important. Okay, so anyway, that completes our kind of video going over the free response and the visible learning document. Hopefully you find it informative and enthralling, and hopefully you can't wait to learn all this stuff. All right, hopefully we didn't spoil anything for you. All right, but have a great hope you continue to enjoy your summer. I know if you play sports, fall sports are going to be starting up soon, so good luck with that. And again, I'll probably make some more videos throughout the rest of the summer, so keep an eye out for those.